My name is Romeek Scott, and this is my presentation on the ISLLC standards. The information that I'm going to present is my interpretation of those standards, and I will be using information that is referenced from the courses that I took that are directly related to the ISLLC standards. I think one of the most important parts or visions of standard number 1 is inclusion. And I say inclusion because with inclusion, that means including the school, including the administrators, and including the community at large. And one of the things that happened when we did do a project, it was a case study in one of my courses, and it was called All A's Are Not Enough. And the reason why I use inclusion as to pick out for standard number 1 is because one of those visions is to make sure that an administrator is addressing academic achievement in all shapes and forms. And in this particular scenario, it was pertaining to academic achievement and recognizing academic achievement, such as the Honor Society. And there was an issue that happened with that, and the role for that administrator had to be a liaison, so to speak, and he had to find out what the issues were. And I think it's important to find out what the issues are if there is a gap in communication, if there is a gap in with the parents, because it seemed in this particular situation there was a gap. There wasn't anything in place to forward thinking for organizations at this particular school. So the idea was to make sure that all parties involved were well aware of what to do and how to address those issues. And when it refers to that standard, it's very important that the administrator knows who's all involved, knows everything that's involved with the students, with the teachers, and with the parents. And there was a gap in communication, and there was a gap in reporting any issues that arose with the student. Although the student was a straight A student, the student had disciplinary issues, and this was not being reported. And so he had to then think of ways to come up with a better plan of action to make sure that all of the students had an opportunity to be recognized, because what happened was it ended up being where there were other things lacking, other activities that were lacking that weren't getting attention, like athletics or music as well. So it's very important that the administrator is forward thinking with activities and recognizing and honoring students and allowing the parents to be a part of it as well. One of my visions for this particular standard is moving teachers forward. And the way we move teachers forward, I know in a presentation that Dr. Whelan had on Eagle Rock, it was pertaining to curriculum mapping and modeling. And it's important that administrators understand assessments and what to do with those assessments once they have extrapolated all the information that they need. And it wasn't, on this particular matter, I had in a class, we read an article about, we had to do a project actually, about in our school district, about what assessments were being done, or how were they being used. And I actually personally asked a colleague of mine who is a teacher about that, and to my disbelief, all they do is pretty much do the assessments and then forward them on. Whether there are results that come back to them about the assessment, that was something that she really didn't know. Her part was to just send the assessments up for the students, and overall those would then be interpreted by administrators and going forward. Another project that we did, which is a part of one of the visions of this standard, is we had to create an actual classroom. It was one of my technology class, my education technology class, where we had to create our own classroom. We had to have particular things in that classroom. So it's important for teachers to be able to put media and put the latest technology into their classrooms, especially with the students today, so that they can actually assist them with learning better. And in that classroom that I know I created, we had to arrange it a certain way, or what we thought was the best way for students to learn and have access to technology. And we had to include a projector, we had to include webcams, we had to include computers, modems, printers, and we had to arrange it in a way that we thought would be conducive to learning. So that was a very interesting way to interpret this particular standard. And with developing teachers, one of the things that I hear from my colleagues quite often is that they don't have enough time to learn or expand themselves. When they have teacher planning days, it's almost as if they're using it to play catch up. And I'm not sure in my district that they offer as much by way of professional development for the teachers here. They do have an opportunity to do it, but it's not as frequent as probably it should be. I know in researching and trying to find out information about that, it wasn't as forthright to know about educators, and I really believe that it is important that educators have the ability to develop themselves and grow as educators and people, so that they can bring that knowledge back into the classroom and use it to help their children. And one of the things that they were talking about, one of my colleagues was talking about, was a whiteboard, and they have an iPad, but it's like, what do we do now? Because there wasn't really any extracurricular coursework or any classes that they could take as teachers to kind of assist them with how they can move forward and move their children forward with the technology and teach better in the classroom. And this standard is very interesting to me, and the reason why is because we actually, in my communities class, had to find a safety plan for our district. And it was interesting, in Duval County, they have a safety plan. However, it's quite convoluted. It was not very specific, the role of each administrator, the role of the teacher, what happens if there is an internal, external violence or threat, and who to call first when something happens. And that was one of the things that we had to address when we did this particular project. And I really was quite taken aback that this was on the Duval County website, as far as their actual action plan to create a safe environment. And the call tree, for lack of better words, really wasn't very sufficient, and it was lacking in loopholes in it. And we had to also talk about what we thought was an issue with that particular type of plan that we saw. So it was interesting to learn about that part of it and know that there is supposed to be a safety plan in place, and it is supposed to be accessible, and it is supposed to be something that anyone can pick up and follow, because in today's environment it's very important that there is a plan of action, especially with the things that has happened in the past, even locally here, with people entering the school wanting to harm children, and children wanting to harm other children, like bullying. There was nothing really I saw about bullying. What is the process or procedure, other than tell your teacher, and then from there on, what if the bullying escalates, and what if there's something that needs to be done. That really was something that in that project we had to address and look at, and it was a great tool for me to see what is going on in our school district with that particular item. I like this standard because it's important that we understand who and what we are and what we need to do. And as administrators, one of the key things is we need to make sure that our students are willing to and able to learn, and our teachers are willing and able to teach. And we had a project where we had to address student apathy. But not only was it student apathy, it was administrative and education apathy as well. And the issue was the principal in this particular scenario was aware, however, it was as if he couldn't grasp or wrap the situation in. There was a lack of communication. There was a breakdown with the community. There was a breakdown with the teachers. And so every time something was put forward, it just met with opposition. And I think it's important that we understand what our community is composed of and who our community is. We need to make sure we have all the necessary information about our community. We need to know statistically what the makeup is there. It may be some makeup or that we don't even understand, that we need to understand. Maybe we need to research certain people. Maybe we need to research certain cultures so we can understand why a student may respond less likely to a male or female teacher or African American or Caucasian teacher or what have you. We need to, as administrators, understand that part and be proactive in planning how to bridge that gap so teachers will feel like they're a part of as well, and they're important, and what they're doing is important, and also the parents as well. And when it comes to doing something and involving them, that's important as well. The teachers, we need to ask the teachers what's going on in your classroom. Have you had any issues, or have you had any, how is your relationship with your students? That way they will want to get involved in like a PTA or just volunteer and see what it is to develop maybe an outreach for the community to see what issues the community has and address those things and come together for that cause. One thing about this standard and standard number 5 is that it is quite near and dear to me concerning the ethical actions of teachers. I address this as, when is Facebook too much? I know that technology that we have in our classrooms now, we are into Facebook and we're into the other media, social media, to bridge the gaps, and we utilize them in our classrooms. However, as administrators and educators, we must draw a line and make sure we don't cross it, and we must ethically do that. And the reason why this concerns me is because I do personally know a case of a teacher here locally that has students on his personal Facebook page. And that's very disconcerting to me, because there should be a screen, if you will, between that, because we have our obligation morally, ethically, to our community to make sure that we are portraying and putting our best foot forward for children, because our personal lives are our personal lives. I know we had to watch a video in one of my classes, and we also had to do a blog concerning privacy, or pick a part of it and with this standard and talk about it and discuss it and talk about what, if anything, has happened locally in our district about that. And it has happened, and it does happen, but as an administrator, we must make sure that our teachers all know the importance of drawing the line to make sure that we're not overstepping our bounds and violating anything with our students and with the parents. It just, because it's the students, it doesn't necessarily stop there. And, lines need to make sure they're drawn for parents as well. We cannot necessarily be too personally involved with our parents. We're there for them if they need us concerning the children. However, delineating what we need to do as educators versus our